Hey guys, welcome to the second Java for Beginners episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the introduction to this course and have now got Java and IntelliJ installed on your machine. If you haven't got them installed on your machine, don't worry, don't panic. I strongly recommend watching over the first video I've done to get an understanding of A, what Java is, and B, as well as get everything you need to get started. So here's what we'll cover in this video. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our own Java project completely from scratch. We're not going to do it with any code snippets like we did in that previous video. We're also going to start by creating our own Java class. So remember, Java is a class-based language. So we're going to go through what a class is and how to create one. We're also going to get familiar with some keywords in Java, and we're going to understand the concept of keywords and what they are. We're just going to touch on a few that we see, but just know that there are many more to cover. We're also going to see the main method, and we're going to understand what the main method is and what it does. We're also going to do our first bit of programming, and we're going to write our first code and for our application. So without further ado, happy coding, and I hope you enjoy this video. So for this video, let's start with a brand new project. So I've opened up IntelliJ IDEA over here, and I'm going to click the new project button. And let's call this project Hello World. And let's set the location as desktop. Just like that. And we're going to leave everything as it is. Make sure it's Java, and we're going to use IntelliJ as the build system. And we're actually going to untick this add sample code. So this is going to be a completely empty project, and we're going to do everything from scratch so we can dissect and understand why certain things are there. So let's hit the create button. I'm going to actually change this to a capital H, just like that, and let's hit create. So there we go, IntelliJ has created our Java project, and you'll see that we've got a source folder as well as the project folder here, Hello World. So we haven't got any files at all, and we have not got a way of running our application because we don't have anything to run. So I'm going to click on the source button over here, and source directory or folder, and I'm going to right click this and select Java class. Now remember, Java is a class-based programming language, which is why the files that you need to create are going to be known as classes. So let's create a new class, and let's just call this Hello World. Kind of the same name as our project. Okay, so let's click enter here to create a class, and you'll notice we have generated this bit of code just by creating a new class. So let's have a look at what's kind of going on right here. So we've got public class Hello World. So this is the name that we gave to the file. So when we right clicked it and created a new file, we gave it the name Hello World. So that's what that has done, is created a public class Hello World. Public is the access modifier. We'll go into this in a bit more detail, but essentially what public means is this is available everywhere. This is a public class. So even if you had loads of different folders, like maybe you had a folder called Hello and then a folder inside that called World, you'd still be able to access this class even from there. But we will go into that a little bit later. Class, this just specifies that this is a class, as this is a class-based programming language. These are known as keywords. Public and class, they're keywords, and they're reserved words in the kind of Java dictionary, if you like. So you won't be able to use these words yourself. We're going to get into variables, but essentially if you were to create a variable, you would not be able to call your variable public or class because it's reserved. It has already got a meaning in Java. And you'll notice here we've got two curly braces here. This is the start and this is the end. Now, all of your code for your class will happen between these braces. That's the point of them. So all of your code has to kind of be written between lines 10 and line 1. So this is just the entry and this is the exit, if you'd like. So this is kind of what a class looks like in Java, and they all look like that. So if we create a new class, and let's call this Hello, see that it does exactly the same thing. So let's delete Hello. So now we know kind of what a class is and what these words kind of mean, and in terms of the kind of process of creating a class. So every Java application needs to have something called a main method. So before we create our main method, let's go over what is a method. A method is a collection of statements that perform an operation. It's basically a block of code that does something, right? So, you might have a application that needs to add 2 numbers. You could create a method called add, and that will go away and add your 2 numbers. So it's just a block of code that does something. And what Java looks for is an entry point, so a way to actually run your application. Notice right now we can't really run the application. If you followed the setup video, you notice we had a run button here, and you can see it's grayed out. So we need to provide Java an entry method, and it always looks exactly the same. So let's write it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to write public, and we notice that we're doing this in between our start and end curly braces for our class. So we're writing this within the class, okay? And we're going to write public. And I don't know if you noticed that IntelliJ is very intelligent. It helps you write your code with ease, and it will give you suggestions. So the next word here is static, which is another keyword. So if we write static, notice that IntelliJ suggested static as an option. So if you click enter, easy peasy. It helps you write your code very quickly this way. The next thing we need to write is void. And I'm going to explain what these words mean again. We already have seen public, but I'll explain kind of static and void as well. So we've got that, and then we're going to write main, just like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to add open brackets here. Notice that when we added the open bracket, it also provided us the closing bracket. This is another way IntelliJ helps. And inside here, all we're going to write is string, and open square bracket and close square bracket, which has been filled out for us. And let's just write args, just like that. And then we're going to do the curly braces. And there we go. If you've noticed, we now have 2 run buttons, because now we've created the entry point. So this is the main method. What it will do is the code between this curly brace and this curly brace is essentially your application. This is the code that will run, and this is your app. So just like a class, we have to give a method curly braces to say where this method starts and where it ends. So now let's go back to these keywords over here. We're going to skip over static because I think this is just a bit of a bigger topic, and we'll go through some other stuff which might make static easy to pick up a little bit later on. But we've already met public, where it means this method or this main method is accessible from anywhere in your project. Void literally means nothing. So when you're writing a method, so for example, let's go back to that calculator application we were doing where you were adding 2 numbers. If you're adding 2 numbers, you kind of have to return the result. So if you were adding 1 and 2, you have to return 3. When we write void, we're saying that the method, so our method here is called main. This is the name of the method. Notice that it's in a different color. So main is the name of the method, and we're saying that the method is a void. It means it returns nothing. It doesn't bring anything back. There's no output. It just does something, right? So it's like adding the 2 numbers and it's not returning the result back, because this obviously is not adding 2 numbers, but in that kind of scenario, you would just not be returning the result. The main method here does not need to return anything. The point of the main method is to be your entry point to run your application. It doesn't need to return anything. So if we try to run this application right now, let's hit this run button over here. Either one of them would work, but let's just run it here directly on the main method on line 3. Notice here it's doing something at the bottom, and there we go. What it's done is, this is kind of what IntelliJ is doing to run the application basically. So this is kind of happening behind the scenes. It's sending it to Java to do this and that. Notice here we've got process finished with exit code 0. Now exit code 0 is just a way in programming where we can say it successfully kind of ran. If it's exit code -1, usually it encountered an error. But if you think about it, we actually haven't written any bit of code here. So there was actually nothing to run, if that makes sense. So technically our application works. It does nothing. It doesn't print anything or anything. So that's why it got exit code 0. Now, one thing I definitely recommend whilst you're following this video is definitely make sure you've got your IntelliJ up and running and you're following along with me. I feel like you find it a lot easier to understand what we're doing, especially if you've written it out yourself. And also, it's okay to break things. So if you've done something and you're seeing loads of errors on your screen, that's great, because you can now figure out why you've got an error and how to fix it, and you'll know for next time. So definitely make sure you're coding along, as it makes learning Java a lot easier. Forget Java, it makes learning programming a lot easier. Now, remember how I said that these are key words in Java? It's to the point where these have to be written exactly in this way and in this exact order for it to work. So if we change this to a capital P, for example, notice here IntelliJ has highlighted it in red, and you can see here we've got exclamation mark and it's saying that we've got 2 errors, right? So if we tried to run this application, notice here we've even got a X above here. If we ran this application, notice here that we've got a bunch of errors here. Well, we've got identifier expected. Basically, the compiler, so whoever's reading this code to convert it into bytecode, if you remember from the previous video in the JVM, they're trying to figure out what the heck public is. And it would do the same thing here if we did static with a capital S. That's slightly different here. And same with void. Oh, to be fair, that is a return type, so we can ignore that. But essentially, these are keywords, so they're meant to be written out like this, because they are reserved in Java in this format. And notice here we've now got our run button back. So if we run that, everything's fine again, right? So I think let's actually write some code. So let's do some programming. So if you remember, the definition of programming is essentially giving commands to the computer to execute, right? It's giving instructions to a computer. So let's print out a message, right? This app's called Hello World, so I think a great place to start is printing the message Hello World. How do you do that? So let's type in system with a capital Y, and notice here it's picked up what we're trying to do. So let's click enter to use that recommendation from IntelliJ, and I'm going to add a dot. Okay, and I'm now going to write out and then followed by another dot. And notice here it's already given us the option to print ln. Print ln means print line. So let's use the top one here. And now if we ran this application just now, you see that it's doing the exact same thing. The reason why is within these brackets we have to give it something to print. So the same way we've got brackets over here, and these are called arguments, by the way. I don't think I really covered this, but these brackets here represent, so for a method you need to have these brackets, an open bracket and a closed bracket, and this here is an argument. So what we need to provide here is we need to provide this print method an argument or something to print. So let's just print hello, and you'll notice here I've started it with double quotes. This is called a string. Basically, notice we've got the word string here. String is essentially a string of characters, and to tell Java you're providing it a string, we need to use these double quotes when you start your string and the double quotes to end it. If we didn't have this double quote here, notice here we're running into some issues. Illegal line end in string literal. So this is a string literal. So if we add that double quotes back at the end, and if we run this, there we go, we've printed out hello. And we can modify this as much as we want. We can do hello world and then rerun the application, and now it's printing out hello world. And you can do this as many times as you'd like. So you can do system.out.print, and remember print ln is printing on a new line. So now you'll see if we do Java is awesome like that and we print, notice that it's printed it on another line. So if we take away the ln, let's see what happens now. Oh, still printed it on another line, but regardless, this is quite a nice way of just getting used to kind of what a method is and kind of what the main method is. There we go. So now, because this printed it on its own line, it started a new line. So now we've got two prints of Java is awesome. You can see that they've kind of joined together here because there's no line in between. So as you can see, it's executing all of the code from this point here to this point here. So everything within these brackets is executed as your application. So what we've just done is made a simple application that just prints things out. Now to make your lives a lot easier, IntelliJ comes with some more shortcuts. So notice here we did system.out.println, and then we gave it a string, just like this. You can actually do sout like that. And if you read the message there, it says prints a string to system.out. And if you click enter right now, would you look at that? It's just automatically filled in what we were going to write. And we can write here IntelliJ is, oh god, let's do that again, is cool, like that, and let's run that. And there you go, we've got some stuff printing out there. Cool. So this is our first Java application, if you will, and I hope that kind of makes sense. One thing I haven't actually mentioned yet is the use of the semicolon. Now in Java, you have to end your statements. So this right here is a statement. This is another statement. This is another statement. Sure, you get the gist now, but all your statements have to end in a semicolon. So look, if you take away one semicolon, oh, IntelliJ is not happy and it says it's expecting a semicolon. It even offers to do it for you. So let's click that. There you go, it's filled it in. But without your semicolons, your app won't compile. So if we run the application now, you see that it does not run. Build failed. Okay. So you can see here there's an error occurred whilst compiling the module hello world. So let's fix that. And let's add those back in. Nice. And if we rerun that, all is well. We've got our stuff printing out. So what I would do now is I would go away and just have some fun, just kind of printing loads of messages, just so you get the idea of how it works, and maybe create a new class and kind of do the same thing. Just remember, you can only run one entry point at a time. So if we did create one called hello world 2, and let's select class, and let's just copy everything we did here. So let's copy these lines here and click enter like that. And let's do hello world 2. If we ran the application here, notice that this still says hello world. It's running this entry point now. Okay, so if we look over here, remember there's only one main method. Well, there's only one entry point at a time. So if we go back up here and we run it from here, from line 3 on hello world, this will be printing out this message over here. And if we go to hello world 2 and run this, notice here this runs hello world 2. So, and you can see here now we have two run configurations because there's 2 different entry points. So you can't have more than one entry point because otherwise it won't be. You need to have one entry point for your whole application, right? You can absolutely have a new class. Well, this is the main one, so let's go delete the method from here. You can absolutely have more than one class, but you can only have one entry point, unless you've designed your app in that way to have multiple entry points, and the user, whoever's using your app, has to choose which one to run. But you see here now, notice that this is erroring because it can't find an entry point for hello world 2's class. Okay, so, and the other thing is, if we refactor this to hello world, notice here we cannot have classes with the same name, because when Java's compiling this, it's going to say, well, we've already compiled a class called hello world, so it has to be unique. That's why we've had to call this one hello world 2. And notice there IntelliJ was sharp enough to let us know before we did anything we regretted. So there we go. Here's just kind of like an introduction to the main method and to the class kind of architecture of Java, as well as we've kind of done our first application together. So as I was saying earlier, it's always worth practicing. Maybe just try doing a few different prints and just get used to it and try and break things. So, you know, just like we did here, where we got rid of the double quotes at the end there, and see and try to understand why things break. You know, you can do all sorts of stuff here. You can do a comma, but if you try to do a quote here, notice here we're kind of broken. Thank you so much for watching this video. and I really hope you enjoyed it. Please do smash the like button, and if you've not subscribed, smash that subscribe button as well. I really do appreciate your support. So here's a quick spoiler alert for the next video in the series. We're going to be looking into variables, and we're going to delve a lot deeper into Java, and it's going to be really exciting. If there's anything you are unsure of from this video, I fully recommend you just keep practicing and trying things out for yourselves, and you'll see how quickly you can figure it out. If you do need some help at all, just feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next one.